Yes, it was when that klaxon went off. Of course, you never knew for sure whether it was a training exercise or whether it was a real thing, and that is true. After a few years of pulling alert, though, and usually I'd say during a normal alert tour, and at the base I was at, that was 7 days, and it varied from base to base. But a 7-day alert tour, you might have 2 or 3, maybe 4 alerts during the week you're on, and of course, obviously, all practice, except they weren't all practice. In my 6 years, I had one that was not a practice, and this was a malfunction with the B-Muse. It was a combination of 3 things, as I understood it. The B-Muse, which was the early warning up in Alaska, and they had some malfunction with that. Then there were, I guess they thought, flights of geese or something flying. Anyway, the command thought that there may be incoming aircraft, and so they had their procedures to follow. If they thought they saw airplanes coming in from Russia, then they were to get us. This particular message it came across was not to launch us, but it was to get us out the end of the runway with the engines running. And the other thing that was a clue was the practice klaxons were usually during daylight hours. I can't remember one ever after 9 o'clock in the evening, and this one happened about 4 o'clock in the morning. When this klaxon goes off at 4 o'clock in the morning, that really got all of our attention because that just never happened. So we run out the airplane, we crank up the engines, we crank the radio up, and we hear this message, which is not a practice message. And so we're taxiing out and we think, whoa, now this changes your whole attitude. And the way I can relate this to you, it just so happened on this particular morning when we got this, we had a brand new navigator, his first tour on alert, first alert tour. And his observation when it was all over and we came back into the alert facility, he said, wow, he said, I didn't know you guys took this so seriously when the klaxon went off. We had to explain to him that this was not a normal klaxon response, that it was it was a real thing. Quite an interesting event, for me anyway. Mm-hmm. We were at a party at the officers club, and in the middle of the party, the wing commander says, all right, everybody go home, go into crew rest, and be prepared. And we knew about the Cuban Missile Crisis. I mean, we knew that it was a high state of readiness for the country. So it was really no big surprise that we were to go into crew rest and to stand by for whatever's going to happen. Well, the next thing that happened was, okay, we're picking up airborne alert along with a lot of other wings that weren't into it right then because of the increased readiness for the whole command. So we take off, I think the second day of the missile crisis. We're airborne on our way on a airborne alert, Chrome Dome. And I'm a co-pilot at this time. And it's about, I'd say 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, out over the Atlantic on the way to Spain to hit the tankers. And the pilot's asleep, I'm up front, and all at once I see a real bright light out in front of the airplane. And we're out over the middle of the Atlantic, and the sky is starting to turn bright. And I thought, oh my God, somebody is dropping nukes. They've already started to drop nuclear weapons somewhere, and those must be, the Russians must be hitting our bases in Spain. That's what I thought I saw. And I get on a radio and I call the number 2 guy. We usually flew in 2-ship cells. I called number 2 and I said, and I think the co-pilot, or no, the pilot was awake. Anyway, I call him, I say, do you see what I see out in front? And he said, yes, I do. And I said, have you heard anything on the radio? Because we should have been getting a message saying, strike your targets. And he said, I haven't heard a thing. And about that time, through this undercast, comes a full moon. It was a full moon. But it was undercast below us, and all I could see was this light. I had never felt so relieved in my life when I saw that it was a moon. I'll tell you, I was terrified. I was terrified when I saw that moon before I knew it was a moon, and that sky lighting up when it shouldn't have been lighting up. I just knew that World War III had kicked off. You know, I don't remember, except for the Cuban Missile Crisis. That was very stressful. But the rest of the time, even on the airborne alerts, I don't remember it being that stressful, except, like say, night refueling sometimes, if you were in weather and having to get to fuel at night, and landing at night and weather may be a problem. Other than that, I didn't sense it so much, but I did sense it years later in my civilian job. And when I worked for the United Way, and we'd have a campaign, and there was a dollar goal set, and at the end of at the last week of the campaign, trying to reach this dollar goal, and everybody, all my coworkers would be so stressed out. And I thought, what is the big deal here? You know, so what if we don't make this goal? So what? And you know, to them, this was life and death. And then it finally dawned on me. I thought, you know what? This is probably the most pressure they've ever been under in their lives, is this. And I thought, oh, wow, what a way to go through life. And I told one of them once, I said, you want to know what pressure is? How about being a 30-year-old aircraft commander of a B-52 with nuclear weapons on board, and you got a problem. You got a real big problem. That's pressure. And so at the time, to answer your question, at the time I didn't really think, except for those exceptions I mentioned, like the Cuban Missile Crisis, the others. But it wasn't until years later that I looked back on it and I thought, hey, that was some pressure I was under at that time, but I don't recall it now as being that great.
The city is awake and headed